Hi, welcome back. You know what time it is, lovelies. It's story time with Chris. As you can see, I have a new bonnet on. There's a reason for that. Let's go ahead and do the reveal. Bow. Yep. Got my hair retwisted and it is super long. I love it. I truly love it. I love my natural hair. I love my dreadlocks. And yes, I refer to them as dreadlocks. I can't speak for other people, but my dreads, my dreadlocks, I love them. I don't see them as dreadful. I reclaim them as an act of beauty, as an expression of my black culture, of my black beauty. Okay? Yes, because this hair is giving. Shout out to my mom. My mom is incredible. She did this randomly last night, and I'm so, so, so grateful. Mom, if you see this, I love you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you. I'm going to try not to cry because my mom hasn't touched my hair since I was way back in the day. But I'm feeling pretty awesome. Nice and fresh. I'm going to turn around so y'all can get the length of the hair. Because if you ever want to get dreadlocks or Norse locks, as I like to call them, which are the Viking equivalent of dreadlocks, maintenance is key. Moisturization, maintenance, all of this long hair. Yes. Just this close away to cosplaying as Ariel from Little Mermaid. So yes, closer. All right. Enough of my blather. You didn't come to hear about hair. You came to hear about a story. And we are back with a series of unfortunate events. As I always say, you don't have to watch these videos when they go live. You're more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, nap time, max relax and chillaxing time, between time, mean time, skinny time, study time, break time, CP time, anytime. If you want to hear a highly animated voice bring you wonderful stories of magic, fantasy, science fiction, adventure, and many, many more in between. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Get ourselves comfortable. Let's go ahead. Chapter 7. An associate of mine once wrote a novel called Corridors of Power, which told the story of various people discussing how the world has become a corrupt and dangerous place and whether or not there are enough people with the integrity and decency necessary to keep the entire planet from descending into despair. I have not read this novel in several years because I participated in enough discussions on how the world has become a corrupt and dangerous place and whether or not there are enough people with the integrity and decency necessary to keep the entire planet from descending into despair without reading about it in my leisure time. But nevertheless, the phrase corridors of power has come to mean the hushed and often secret places where important matters are discussed. Whether or not they are actual corridors, the corridors of power tend to feel quiet and mysterious. If you've ever walked inside an important building, such as the main branch of a library or at the office of a dentist who has agreed to disguise your teeth, then you may have experienced this feeling that accompanies the corridors of power, and Violet Claus Baudelaire experienced it as they reached the end of the vertical flame diversion, and followed the mysterious sweatered scout as he climbed out of the secret passageway. Even through their masks, the two siblings could sense that they were an important place, even though it was nothing more than a dim curved hallway with a small grate on the ceiling where the morning light was shining through. "That's where the smoke escapes from Snow Scout's fire," whispered the mysterious scout, pointing up at the ceiling. "That leads to the very center of the Valley of Four Drafts, so the smoke is scattered to the four winds. VFD doesn't want anyone to see the smoke." "Where's the smoke?" Violet said. "There's fire." "Exactly," the scout said, "and anyone who saw smoke coming from this high up in the mountains might become suspicious and investigate. In fact, I found a device that works exactly according to this principle." He reached into his backpack and drew out a small rectangular box filled with small green tubes, exactly like the one that Sunny had seen the man with a beard but no hair give to Esme Squalor. "No, thank you," Esme said. "I don't smoke." "I don't either," the scout said, "but these aren't cigarettes. These are verdant flammable devices. Verdant means green, so when you light one, it gives out a dark green smoke so another volunteer will know where you are." Hold that thought for a quick second. Klaus took the box from the Scout and squinted at it in the dim light. I've seen a box like this before, he said, in my father's desk, when I was looking for a letter opener. I remember thinking it was strange to find them because he didn't smoke. He must have been hiding them, Violet said. Why was he keeping them a secret? The entire organization is a secret, the Scout said. It was very difficult for me to learn the secret location of the headquarters. It was difficult for us too, Klaus said. We found it in a coded map. I had to draw my own map, the Scout said, and reached into a pocket of his sweater. He turned on the flashlight and the two Baudelaires could see he was holding a notebook with a dark purple cover. What's that? Violet asked. It's a commonplace book, the Scout said. Whenever I find something that seems important or interesting, I write it down. That way, all my important information is in one place. I should start one, Klaus said. My pockets are bulging with scraps of paper. From information I read in Dr. Montgomery's book and a few others, the Scout said, I managed to draw a map of where to go from here. He opened the purple notebook and flipped a few pages until he reached a small but elegant rendering of the cavern, the vertical flame diversion, and the hallway in which they were standing now. As you can see, he said, running his finger along the hallway, the passageway branches off in two directions. This is a very well-drawn map, Violet said. Thank you, the Scout replied. I've been interested in cartography for quite some time. See, if we go to the left, there's a small area used for sled and snowshoe storage, at least according to a newspaper article I found. But if we go right, we'll arrive at the vernacularly fastened door, which should open into the headquarters kitchen. We might walk in on the entire organization having breakfast. The two Baudelaires looked at one another through their masks, and Violet put a hand on her brother's shoulder. They did not dare to say out loud their hope that one of their parents might be just around the corner. Let's go, Violet whispered. The Scout nodded silently in agreement and led the Baudelaires down the hallway, which seemed to get colder and colder with every step. And now they were so far from Bruce and the Snow Scouts that there was no need to whisper, but all three children kept quiet as they walked down the dim, curved hallway, hushed by the feeling of the corridors of power. At last, they reached a large metal door with a strange device where the doorknob should have been. The device looked a bit like a spider with curly wires spreading out in all directions, but where the head of the spider might have been was the keyboard of a typewriter. Even in her excitement to see the headquarters, Violet's inventing mind was interested in such a device, and she leaned closer to see what it was. Wait, the sweatered Scout said, reaching his arm out to stop her. This is a coded lock. If we don't operate it properly, we won't be able to get into the headquarters. How does it work? Violet said, shivering slightly in the cold. I'm not sure, the Scout admitted and took out his commonplace book again. It's called the vernacularly fastened door, so it operates language, Klaus finished. Vernacular is a word for a local language or dialect. Of course, Violet said. See how the wires are curled around the edges of the door? They're locked in place unless you type in the right sequence of letters on that keyboard. There are more letters than numbers, so it would be difficult for someone to guess the combination of the lock. That's what I read, the Scout confirmed, looking at a page in his notebook. You're supposed to type in these 3 specific phrases in a row. The phrases change every season, so volunteers need to have a lot of information at their fingertips to use the door. The first is the name of the scientist most widely credited with the discovery of gravity. That's easy, Violet said and typed in Sir Isaac Newton, the name of a physicist she had always admired. When she was finished, there was a muted clicking sound from the typewriter keyboard as if the device was warming up. The second is the Latin name for the volunteer feline detectives, the Scout said. I found the answer remarkable phenomena of the Mornay Mountains. It's Panthera leo. He leaned forward and typed in Panthera leo. This was a very quiet buzzing sound, and the children saw that the wires nearing the hinges were shaking very slightly. It's beginning to unlock, Violet said. I hope I get a chance to study this invention. Let's get to the headquarters first, Klaus said. What's the third phrase? The Scout sighed and turned a page in the commonplace book. I'm not sure, he admitted. Another volunteer told me that it's the central theme of Leo Tolstoy's novel Anna Karenina, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet. Which is an amazing book, and kids, when you get older, probably about 15, 16, read the book. It is an amazing book, and it's an amazing film if you ever get to watch it. More specifically, the one from, I think it was 2017 or 2016. Great movie, great book. Anna Karenina. Amazing story. Violet knew that her brother was smiling, even though she could not see his face through the mask. She was remembering one summer very long ago when Klaus was very young and Sunny was not even conceived. Every summer, the Baudelaire's mother would read a very long book, jotting that lifting a large novel was the only exercise she liked to get during the hot months. During the time Violet was thinking of, Mrs. Baudelaire chose Anna Karenina for her summer reading, and Klaus would sit on his mother's lap for hours at a time while she read. The middle Baudelaire had not been reading very long, but their mother helped him with their big words and would occasionally stop reading to explain what had happened in their story. And in this way, Klaus and his mother read the story of Miss Karenina, whose boyfriend treats her so poorly that she throws herself under a train. Violet had spent most of that summer reading the laws of thermodynamics and building a miniature helicopter out of an egg beater and some old copper wiring, but she knew that Klaus must remember the central theme of the book he read on his mother's lap. The central theme of Anna Karenina, he said, is that a rural life of moral simplicity, despite its monotony, is the preferable personal narrative to a daring life of impulsive passion, which only leads to tragedy. That's a very long theme, the scout said. It's a very long book, Klaus replied, but I can work quickly. My sisters and I once tapped out a long telegram in no time at all. Too bad that telegram never arrived, the scout said quietly, but the middle Baudelaire was already pressing the keys on the vernacularly door. As Klaus typed the words, a rural life, a phrase which here means country. The wires began to curl and uncurl very quickly, like worms on a after it was rained, but the time Klaus was typing the preferable personal here means the way to live your life, the entire door was quivering as if it were as nervous as the Baudelaires. Finally, Klaus typed tragedy, and the three children stepped back, but instead of opening, the door stopped shaking, and the wires stopped moving, and the passageway was dead silent. It's not opening, Violet said. Maybe that isn't the central theme of Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. It seemed like it was working to the last word, the scout said. Maybe the mechanism is a little stuck, Violet said. Or maybe a daring life of impulsive passion only leads to something else, the scout said, and in some cases this mysterious person was right. A daring life of impulsive passion is an expression that refers to people who follow what is in their hearts, and like people who prefer to follow their head, or follow the advice of other people, or follow a mysterious man in a dark blue raincoat, people who lead a daring life of impulsive passion end up doing all sorts of things. For instance, if you've ever found yourself reading a book entitled The Bible, you would find the story of Adam and Eve, whose daring life of impulsive passion led to them putting on clothing for the first time in their lives, in order to leave the snake-infested garden where they had been living. Bonnie and Clyde, another famous couple who lived a daring life of impulsive passion, found that it led them to a successful, if short, career in bank robbery. And in my own case, in the few moments where I have led a daring life of impulsive passion, it has led to all sorts of trouble, from false accusations of arson to a broken cufflink I had never been repaired. But in this case, as the Baudelaires stood at the vernacularly fastened door, hoping to reach the VFD headquarters, rescue their sister, and see if one of their parents was indeed alive, it was not the sweatered scout but the two Baudelaires who were right. Because in Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, a daring life of impulsive passion leads only to tragedy, as Klaus said. And as Violet said, the mechanism was a little stuck, and after a few seconds the door swung open with the slow, eerie... The children stepped through the door, blinking in the sudden light, and stood frozen in their steps. If you've read this far in the Baudelaire's woeful story, then you will not be surprised to learn that the VFD headquarters in the Valley of Four Drafts in the Mormain Mountains was no more. But Violet and Klaus, of course, were not reading their own story. They were in their own story. This was part of the story where they were sick with shock at what they saw. The vernacularly fastened door did not open onto a kitchen. Not anymore. When the Baudelaires found the mysterious scout through the doorway, they found themselves standing in what first seemed to be a large field, growing a black and ruined harvest in a valley as cold and drafty as its name. But slowly they saw the charred remains of the grand, impressive building that had stood where the three children were standing. Nearby was a handful of silverware that had survived the blaze, scattered in front of the remnants of a stove, and a refrigerator stood to one side as if it were guarding the ashen remains of the rest of the kitchen. To one side, with a pile of burnt wood, they had probably once been a large dining table with a half-melted candelabra sticking out of the top like a baby tree. Farther away, they could see the mysterious shapes of other objects that had survived the fire. A trombone, the pendulum of a grandfather clock, what looked like a periscope, or perhaps a spy scope, an ice cream scoop lying forlornly in a pile of ashes encrusted with burnt sugar, and an iron archway emblazoned with the words VFD Library. But there was nothing beyond the archway but piles and piles of blackened remains. It was a devastating sight, and it made Violet and Klaus feel as if they were all alone in a world that had been completely ruined. The only thing they could see that seemed untouched by the fire was a sheer white wall beyond the refrigerator that rose up as far as two siblings could see. It took the siblings, the Baudelaires, a few moments to realize that it was a frozen waterfall, rising up in a slippery slope, tidal drop, toward the source of the stricken stream on Mount Fraught, so shiny and white that it made the ruined headquarters look even darker. "It must have been beautiful," the sweatered scout said in a quivering voice. He walked toward the waterfall, his feet churning up black dust with every step. "I read that there was a large window," he said, moving his gloved hand in the air as if it were still there. "When it was your turn to cook, you could look out at the waterfall while you were chopping vegetables or simmering a sauce. It was supposed to be very peaceful, and there was a mechanism just outside the window that turned some of the water from the pool into steam. The steam rose up and covered the headquarters so it couldn't have been seen through the blanket of mist." The Baudelaires walked to where the scout was standing and looked onto the frozen pool at the bottom of the waterfall. The pool branched off into two tributaries, a word which here means divisions of rivers or streams, which each twisting off in a different direction past the ruins of the headquarters and curving around the Mornmain Mountains until they had disappeared from view. Violet and Klaus gazed sadly at the icy swirls of black and gray they had noticed when they were walking alongside the stricken stream. "It was ashes," Klaus said quietly. "Ashes from the fire fell into the pool at the bottom of the waterfall, and the stream carried them down the river." Violet found that it was easier to discuss a small specific matter than think about her immense disappointment. "But the pool is frozen solid," she said. "The stream couldn't have carried the ashes anywhere." "It wouldn't have been frozen when it happened," Klaus replied. "The heat from the fire would have thawed the pool." "It must have been awful to see," the sweatered scout said. Violet and Klaus stood with him, imagining the inferno, a word which here means enormous fire that destroyed a secret headquarters high in the mountains. They could almost hear the shattering of glass as the windows fell away, and the crackle of the fire as it consumed everything it could. They could almost smell the thick smoke as it floated upward in blackened sky, and they could almost see the books in the library falling from the burning shelves and tumbling into ashes. The only thing they could not picture was who might have been at the headquarters when the fire began, running out into the freezing cold to avoid the flames. "Do you think," Violet said, "any of the volunteers?" "There's no sign that anyone was here," the scout said quickly. "But how can we know for sure?" Klaus said. "There could be a survivor someplace, right now." "Hello?" Violet called, looking around her at the rubble. "Hello?" She found that her eyes were filling with tears. As she called out for the people she knew in her heart were somewhere nearby. The eldest Baudelaire felt as if she had been calling for these people since that terrible day on the beach, and that if she called them enough, they might appear before her. She thought of all the times she had called them, back when she lived with her siblings in the Baudelaire mansion. Sometimes she called them when she wanted them to see something she had invented. Sometimes she called them when she wanted to know she had arrived home. And sometimes she called them just because she wanted to know where they were. Sometimes Violet just wanted to see them and feel that she was safe as long as they were around. "Mother?" Violet Baudelaire called. "Father?" There was no answer. "Mom?" Klaus called. "Dad!" The Baudelaires heard nothing but the rush of all four of the valley's drafts, and a long creak as the vernacularly fastened door blew shut. They saw that the door had been made to look just like the side of the mountain so that they could scarcely see where they had come from, or their way to get back. Excuse me. Now, they were truly alone. "I know we are all hoping to find people at the headquarters," the sweatered scout said gently, "but I don't think anyone is here. I think we're all by ourselves." "That's impossible!" Klaus cried, and Violet could hear that he was crying. He reached through his layers of clothing until he found his pocket and pulled out a page 13 from the Snicket file, which had been carrying with him since the Baudelaires had found it at Heimlich Hospital. The page had a photograph of their parents standing with Jacques Snicket, another man the Baudelaires had been unable to identify, and above the photograph was a sentence Klaus had memorized from reading it so many times. Because of the evidence discussed on page 9, he recited tearfully, experts now suspect that there may be, in fact, one survivor of the fire, but the survivor's whereabouts are unknown. He walked up to the scout and shook the page in his face. "We thought the survivor would be here," he said. "I think the survivor is here," the scout said quietly, and removed his mask to reveal his face at last. "I'm Quickly Quagmire," he said. "I survived the fire that destroyed my home, and I was hoping to find my brother and sister." And that is where we will end for tonight. Surprise, surprise. So many twists and turns. Because if you remember, the Quagmire triplets are 3 siblings. So triplets means 3, quadruplets means 4. There are 3 of them. There's Isadora and Duncan, and now we get to meet their older brother, Quigley, which, if you remember, the Quagmire triplets, Isadora and Duncan, believed that their brother had perished in the fire. But he's here. And now we're going to see what happens in the next chapter when we meet again. I love you all so very much. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.